Hi, I'm Sarah,
And I'm Tess.
and this is the Basically Bookish podcast.
Last night, we both went and saw Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, and we've got some thoughts.
In this episode, we will be sharing our opinions of the 2026 adaptation of Emily Bronte's Gothic masterpiece.
These are just our opinions, and what worked or didn't work for us might be different for you, and that's okay.
If you're curious about the plot of the novel, we've got two nice chunky episodes where we break it down, so we'll make sure to have those linked in the show notes.
This episode will contain spoilers for both the novel and the movie, so if you haven't seen the movie or read the book and you don't want them spoiled, come back to us when you're ready.
Before we get started, don't forget to follow us on social media. We are Basically Bookish Pod across all platforms, and we'd love for you to join our digital book club.
Maybe we should start this by asking the question whether or not we thought this compared to the book at all, or how we want to separate it.
Yeah, I think that if you can move past the book, which we both loved, the movie is certainly a take on the book for sure. I think that it left me with the same like haunting feeling that the book did of like unfinished business. I thought that was the main stand, and so I did kind of feel that at the end, which felt familiar from the book.
Yeah, I think that I a bit disagree. I think that at the end of the novel, I did have a sense of closure. I felt that there were these generational cycles of trauma that had been completed and course corrected when it came to like Kathy and Harriton closing those cycles of abuse. And it felt like they could finally rest and move on in a way.
Right. I guess I mean like throughout the book that everything was
Right.
like one of the plots throughout the story is this idea of unfinished business and just like sort of dragging things out for multiple generations. And so I definitely felt that even though there weren't multiple generations present in
Right.
the story.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
My notes for this are all over the place.
Yeah.
I did think that this adaptation is not really an adaptation at all. It's hard to compare the two because it is an apples to oranges conversation. So the tone is completely different. The characters are completely different. The entire second act is omitted, which, like we were saying, does take away from those cycles of abuse and generational trauma. So in my notes, I said, was this Wuthering Heights? No. Was it even close? No.
Right. Jacob asked me like in the first 15 seconds, he's like, "So this is true to the book, right?" And I was like, "No." And that's an understatement. There's no way to really fully put how much of an understatement that is.
Yes. I guess there is a part of me that can hold these two pieces of art separately from each other because unfortunately at the end of the day I am but a girl who enjoys weird horny girl art and it was visually stunning. I was entertained, but it was also just shallow and messy for the sake of being shallow and messy and entertaining. It really did feel like a TikTokification of this greater work of literature.
Right, a TikTokification. Yeah, I think that definitely the added sexuality really felt forced. I think by the second hour, it just felt like a Rob Lordy orgy.
Right.
It's just
So gratuitous.
embarrassing. Yeah, it's sort of
Yeah.
embarrassing, really. There were a lot of grotesque features, which I think that I found intriguing. There were a lot of modern day elements added in, which of course isn't true to any form of it that's ever come before. I think what the director was going for was a commentary on love as a destructive force, which I think is captured the grudges and what regret can do to you over time. And so in that way it's loyal to the book, but that is where the similarity ends for sure.
Yes. I would definitely agree with that.
It's just like 2.5 hours of pining, which really is, in a lot of ways, the book. There's a lot of just going back and forth and back and forth. And so I felt that
I did feel that as well.
it
I
was
think that,
somewhere.
right.
It was
I felt
some,
that
the story was in there somewhere.
kind of, but not really like at all, also.
Right.
I do feel that at the end of the day, this movie did feel like an self insert fanfic and an amalgamation of a lot of other influence without real substance to sink your teeth into. And I really do wish she had just called it something else, like velvet and grass or like dirt and latex or something. And I wish she had changed the characters' names and it could have just been inspired by Wuthering Heights. But also, maybe at the end of the day, it's the outrage marketing of it all. Because if she had done that, we wouldn't be sitting here discussing it as much as we are.
Right. Yeah. I felt it was a somewhat self aggrandized version of it. She really does insert so much of Emerald Fennel into it. It was recognizable. There were parts. I even thought that she treated the characters similarly to characters I had seen in Saltburn. That
Right.
kind of like, yeah, it comes up a little bit for me.
And speaking of Saltburn, and unfortunately, I think Emerald Fennel's specific worldview, I felt like where Saltburn fell flat for me is that it sort of tried to be this class commentary, but at the end of the movie, the only kind of commentary you get is poor people, you need to be wary of them. And if they're getting close to you, it's
Right.
probably for nefarious reasons.
Right.
So I think that we get the perspective of this very privileged woman. I think she's a talented director. I think visually how she does portray her storytelling is very intriguing and it really does draw you in. But again, I wish that there were more voices in the room with her.
Right.
Which brings me to a huge, huge conversation, which is that central to the plot is Heathcliff's ethnicity and him being othered because of it. So there is a definite whitewashing that Emerald Fennel has done here, and it's interesting to hear her talk in interviews about only being able to make the movie that she imagined when she was reading the story.
And the Heathcliff casting, I mean, has had some comments around if that should be a person of color and, casting Jacob in it. What do you kind of think about that commentary?
I think the thing is everyone who loves this book has such a personal connection to it. And so you can only ever kind of make the movie that you sort of imagined yourself when you read it, and then you can, I don't know, I think I was sort of focusing on kind of sadomasochistic elements of it. And so, but that's the great thing about this movie is it could be made every year and it would still be so moving and so interesting. There are so many different takes. So, I just welcome I think every year we should have a new one.
And so it's kind of like she either can't imagine a person of color as the lead love interest, or she just unconsciously omitted all of those references to Heathcliff being described as a person of color. And so maybe
Right.
that was a blind spot in her youth, but why are there no other voices in the room with her?
Right. I think I can speak to this a little bit. So, and it's also with the similarities to the book and differences. When the movie Catherine first sort of starts to decide that she may love Heathcliff, she comes up against Heathcliff in this sort of weird jostling where this large pig is being slaughtered. And I thought the juxtaposition was fitting. We do have glimpses of Emerald understanding the book on a deeper level. And so I think that there's a couple places where it's obvious that she had zero intention of being loyal to the book. That's what I think is worthy of conversation, why she would move away from that so intentionally. She doesn't even imply that Isabella and Edgar are brother and sister. It's just sort of that these two people are living together. And of course, you've already described the other missing characters. It's like Henley, Harriton, all these characters, which are sort of not necessarily essential to the plot, but she blends them into the plot in a way that changes the story. I hadn't seen the casting for Edgar prior to the movie. Intentionally casting Edgar as Shahzad Latif immediately shows us that Emerald has no intention or interest in acknowledging the racial issues in the slightest. And I
It's
actually thought it showed her understanding of the book to the degree that the casting is cheeky, but more even distasteful. And it's meant to be this distasteful surprise to the loyalists of the book, I think. And that's how I felt when I suddenly saw Edgar. I thought it changed the book in a way that was sort of a slap.
right, which is interesting because it does kind of bring up questions about one outrage marketing. It also brings up questions about perhaps Emerald Fennel's political affiliations and
Yeah,
the things that are important to her. I also think that well, first of all, one, you had your cast right there, right? Isabella
right.
and yeah, like come on.
As Catherine, yeah.
Yes, also to make
Yeah.
Catherine a blonde, where there's just so much that was just intentionally, like you said, almost like spitting in the face of the loyalists. But I think
Yeah,
that's
I don't
go ahead.
buy for a minute the commentary that I see that Emerald didn't understand the book or that it was lost on her because she was a child. I think she very much understood the book. You can see that throughout. There's glimpses of her understanding the book at a very deep level, and she intentionally blends characters together. For instance, as I was going through, you have that once you meet Edgar, the next scene is this scene where Nellie and Catherine are sitting with Earnshaw, Mr. Earnshaw, and I am immediately proven true because Emerald imbibes this racial tension between Nellie and Mr. Earnshaw into the story, which I again don't think added anything to the plot, but again I think is a nod to her understanding of the classes and the racial tension that is present in the book. She
Right.
just degrades it and changes it in a way that isn't essential to the plot anymore, allowing her to still have her love story without these unnecessary elements, which I think is,
While
yeah.
at the same time feeding into negative stereotypes, making her ethnic characters be the villain, be the kind of unsexy Asian man. And I think that this is a perfect segue. I think that it's really interesting that all of this discourse is happening at the same time that we're both reading Blood Over Brighthaven, because that book has such clear themes of colonialism and it asks the question of intent versus impact. So, in a nutshell, intent is the motivation behind an action, while impact is the actual result or how the action is perceived by others. There's often a gap between the two. Good intentions don't always guarantee a positive outcome, and while intention matters, you still need to take responsibility for the impact your actions have on others. So, the question becomes whether Emerald did not have the intent of erasing the racial aspects of the story and flattening the message behind the source material, or if it is a little bit more malicious. I am definitely giving her a bombastic side eye. But I do think that like the TikTokification of Wuthering Heights, I think is really fitting here. It's pretty, it's sparkly, it's easy to digest, and it's completely void of any deeper message.
Right. Yeah, I think that you hit it right on the head. Exactly. When making a movie of this scale, there is responsibility to the social ramifications, and being blind to them is not impressive. It's rage baiting.
Yes. And my blood is a little bit boiling. Just to
Right.
like
Right.
nail this, like hammer this nail a little bit more.
Go
I'm
ahead.
talking about the colorblind casting
I
and
want to
the
talk about it too.
diverse, yes,
Yeah, go
and the
ahead.
diverse casting as almost a way to subvert the criticism of like, well, I don't really see color. But the problem is not the lack of representation, but the misunderstanding that race isn't a central driving force of the plot. The author doesn't see color, so there's an erasure of cultural experience on both sides of the coin. And she just completely misses the point of what Emily was trying to say. It's so wild to me that she made Nellie such a villain because reading the book, Nellie is one
Right.
of the characters that we sympathize with, and making one of the POC characters a villain is crazy work.
Agreed, 100%. You know, I didn't clock Nellie's prowess in the book at all. After watching the movie, I think I have a newfound respect for the character. Emerald did her best to make the character out to be evil, but I think it was weak at best. You know, I think we saw through it. It was really forced. And obviously the blackmailing that's present in there is not present at all. Joseph is this beloved character in the movie. He's absolutely terrible in the books. There was one part where Nellie throws a napkin on Catherine. I thought that was pure comedy. But, you know, there were parts that were very emotional when childhood Heathcliff, I had a really hard time connecting with the character because I had pictured something so differently in my head. And when they're sitting out on the moors, I feel like I know what it is. Catherine says it perfectly in chapter 15. She says, well, never mind. That is not my Heathcliff. I shall love mine yet and take him with me. He's in my soul. And so we can look at Emerald's version of Heathcliff, but that's not my version of Heathcliff. It was a watering down of the character that allowed you to feel things for him that weren't earned. And also the character itself was just criminally underwritten. There's no character to Jacob Elordi. Of course, you can't take your eyes off him when he's on the screen. And so
Hello.
that's a little distracting.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was
At one point,
flat.
It was the scene where he finds Margot Robbie in the moors and she's like relieving herself and he's like grabbing her by the bodice, like we're having our bodice ripper moment. The scene is so intense. And my husband leans over to say something to me and I was like, you have to stop talking. You have to stop talking right now.
Right?
I'm
This is what we've been
locked
waiting
in.
for. 2 hours and 20 minutes of slop.
I mean, was
Yeah.
it pretty? It was beautiful. It was fantastic. The colors were amazing. The lighting, fantastic. I loved
Yeah,
the costuming.
I don't want to gloss over that in that way, in the way of creating these epic, every single shot was beautiful. The lighting, the clothing, the accessories, it was stunning and Emerald should be applauded for that. But for the story, there was nothing present in terms of the story that we had read. But,
Right.
everyone takes away their own thing and that's what makes great books. I don't know what I'm trying
Yeah, it's so hard.
I'm trying to stay with, we're trying to keep pace here.
Anyway, what else do we have on the docket
Yeah,
here?
I know what I was going to say. I heard something to the effect of the dollhouse being something that I couldn't stop thinking about throughout the entire movie. I heard something that someone said that this was like the dollhouse version of Wuthering Heights to Emerald's dollhouse version. And I felt exactly that's what it felt like. It felt very juvenile at times and then very forced in terms of the
Again,
BDSM.
again, that fanfic self-insert, but you have the craziest budget behind you.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah,
It's a choice.
that's exactly my first note. I said the movie is certainly a somewhat self-aggrandized take with grotesque but undeniably intriguing modern day elements added in.
Right. Yes, I have heard people not comparing it to in a positive light, but the Romeo and Juliet adaptation from like the early 2000s, late
Right.
90s
Yeah.
with Leonardo DiCaprio. I love that movie.
Love it.
And it has a modern setting. There's guns, there's bright colors. It's visually stunning, but it does carry the exact same weight and themes and elements, which really ties it all together. And I do fear that, I mean, I like to think that
It
there's
should
hope for
not
the
be
next
your first.
generation.
Right. Go ahead.
But I fear that this isn't just like a dumbing down, for it to be understandable or digestible to audiences. I think that we're not giving our audiences enough credit for being able to really understand and tackle these big themes.
Completely. Yeah. I think that it's shown time and time again that you can make complex movies that work with nuance, bring back nuance. Please. That's all I thought the
Right.
movie was just, I really appreciate nuance more in those moments when I'm sitting,
Yeah.
for 2.5 hours. I thought it was really gratuitous with
Absolutely.
yeah.
There's one scene that I did feel captured the energy of the book for me. It's the scene where Heathcliff is confronting Catherine about her being unable to be jealous over him and
Yeah.
Isabella. And when he's telling her, "Thank you for telling me Isabella's little secret. I'm going to make good use of that." That did have that same energy. And I was really excited to see that on screen. But that is kind of where it ended.
Right.
I also, unfortunately, did feel that Margot Robbie acting like a petulant teenager took me out of the movie a couple times. It's
Yeah.
just unfortunately not. I mean, it's not.
It was also unnecessary for the story that she was presenting. She didn't have to present a teenager. She could have just jumped to the adult version of Catherine. There's so much that she left out of the story and so much that she rewrote, like Catherine going back and visiting her father after marrying Linton, which never happened. And so there was so much like rewritten that you didn't have to have this teenage version of her, for any reason. I thought that was kind of silly.
Yeah, it's just like not behavior that's becoming of a teenager, let alone someone in their like mid 30s.
And I thought, justice for Isabella, because I felt like the character in the book, what Emerald took away from the book was, again, it's hard to say what was taken away, but I think it was a full understanding of the character. And I think that what she did to that character was intentional, completely flipping the tables and making one of those smarter characters that's in the book into, it's hard to not say bastardized version.
No, but I mean, it completely is. It completely is. I mean, from Heathcliff literally hanging Isabella's puppy to turning her into like puppy play, that was insane.
Right.
However, hear me out. So this is embarrassing, but also we're all friends here, right? So this is just my opinion. I can only speak my truth. Obviously, I completely agree with what you just said. Isabella in the book definitely embodies this sort of I can fix him naivety that Heathcliff plays into, right? And she is one of the smarter and stronger characters in the novel. The movie was interesting in the way that they did kind of bring up consent in this very twisted way. And also again, a little bit of tea about me. Sometimes it really do be like that. You just kind of find yourself in a situation and you're like, how do we get here? I did see a TikTok of a girl that posted, respectfully, I'd be on my knees too, and girl, same. So
Right.
it happens sometimes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell you.
Right. The scene in her bedroom where she's just like, yeah. And he's like, stop. And she's like, you can see all the judgment that she's enduring in that moment. And I think
Right.
that there were really very real aspects to it. Like I said, I don't think that there's a naivety at blame here. I think that there's a masterful power play that's being told through the story. I'm still digesting it. It's only been a day, but
Right.
it's definitely one of those movies that is recognizable from scene one
Yes.
and will probably make its way into a cultural phenomena within some groups. And so,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
could see myself eating this up as a teenager, like early
right,
20s.
right.
I will say, when we're talking about it kind of becoming part of the cultural zeitgeist, I will also say that I don't know personally if I would have reached for Wuthering Heights if it had not been for this movie. And so I'm very grateful for that because I do feel that Wuthering Heights is a true work of art and an important one. Maybe there's other people who picked it up or reread the book because of this movie adaptation coming out. And I do think that that's a net positive. Hopefully, people can understand the text and don't just gloss over the themes in the same way that Emerald maybe has or hasn't. But I do, again, I've got faith in people.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Emerald, in that way, should come and get her flowers. Thank you for bringing so much conversation to the table. And the Vogue editor in me is just, the Pinterest in me loves this. It's going to be filling up my mind for years to come.
Absolutely. I've already seen Trisha Paytas and Moses Hackman do a cosplay, and like they were
Yeah.
right there, Emerald.
Right.
Well, okay, wait. I do have to talk about the scene though. So overall, I did love the costuming. I loved the set design, the colors, the cinematography. I thought all of that was beautiful. There was that scene where it's after the Mr. Earnshaw Hindley amalgamation character has passed away because he's an alcoholic. And there's
Right.
all those ridiculous piles of bottles. Like that did make me laugh out loud.
Me too. I laughed out loud during that too.
So that was kind of bad. Other than that, but I mean, could this have all just been like a music video or like a Vogue fashion shoot or
Right,
something like that?
exactly. A Vogue spread or something. That's what it looked like. It looked like it
Yes.
was all just setting up for the Met Gala.
Again, and but again, like so the TikTokification. But then I don't want
Right.
to. I want more pretty movies. I want more art. I want more beautiful. I want more beauty in the world. I also want it to have depth and meaning. So this one did just miss the mark for me at the end of the day.
But it also elicits this response where it makes you so verbose on the subject. So,
Right.
maybe that's exactly what we needed is an enemy to fight together.
Yes, yes. Let us know what do you guys think of all of this?
Did you see it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? We don't know.
We don't know. Was there anything else that you wanted to say? I know that you wanted to talk something about like the colorblind casting, but I know that we did kind of touch on.
Yeah, it was just more about Nellie and the state of mind that you would have to come up with the narrative to make Nellie out to be such an evil villain. It takes the shape of a petulant child to have that opinion of Nellie. And I think in that way, Emerald's almost mirroring Heathcliff's opinion of Nellie and treating her like the help. And I just thought it was a crime against such a beautiful character. Even if you do find some of what Nellie does to be undermining the main characters, they still do it all themselves. So in
Right.
that way, Nellie's
Even
just watching.
even essentially Emerald blaming Catherine's death on Nellie, where it's like the
Mhm.
context of the book is that Catherine, since they were kids, has made herself sick on purpose to get her way, essentially.
Right.
So it is it's the boy who cried wolf situation, but you don't get that in this adaptation.
Right. And again, right there, it's present right there. Emerald's understanding of the character when she has Nellie throw the napkin on Catherine as she's crying on the staircase. Emerald understood that about the character. She understood the dynamic. And so it was certainly Emerald's take of Wuthering Heights.
Yes. All right.
And let's talk about that final scene. The way that Catherine dies in the end, I think was, well, go ahead if you want to go first. I'm still sort of forming my thoughts about it. I hadn't quite thought of what I wanted to
Sure.
say. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So I did find that final scene pretty interesting. Visually, I loved it. I loved how it was all just pretty much one color. Well, so I'm thinking of the scene where she's lying in bed and she's like bleeding out and it's
Right.
just all one color because you've got the flesh toned walls and everything like that. I did like that. And so the scene actually a little bit later, again, I felt where Heathcliff is like running through the moors, very cinematic. And then he comes through past Edgar and Edgar's just like, you don't want to see her. He's just like such a cuck in that, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh my God, here we go. But then that scene where Jacob Elordi is holding Margot Robbie and he's like rocking her and he's saying all of those very famous lines, I did actually find myself shedding a tear. And I looked over to my husband who also did. But thinking about it a little bit more, I do think that they didn't really earn that emotion from us. I feel like that emotion was solicited because of very powerful storytelling aspects that have to do with movies specifically, but we didn't really see the tension, the longing between Margot and Jacob. I did feel like for the most part they were just kind of nasty to each other. We didn't see that like a little bit of that tenderness. And I just
Yeah, there was no
elicited,
backstory. There was no
right.
story that made us like them compelling in the way that it was believable. There was no thing that he did for her or she did for him, really. She was mainly just mean to him. And so it
Right. And
just
he
was
was just
missing.
completely like a doting, little loving, obsessed puppy. So
Right.
hold emotion from me, but I don't feel like that emotion was necessarily earned through the storytelling more than the visual aspects of it, the music that was playing, the montage of them as children, all of these things kind of combined together to where my brain goes, oh yes, I should be emotional at this point.
Right. And that's like the only time in the movie that we see that emotional onslaught of all these different scenes. You're right. It was definitely meant to make you cry. And I think there wasn't a dry eye in the house that I
Right.
saw.
Oh, okay. What really quickly too? Let's talk about the demographics of people that you saw in the movie theater.
Right.
So I did see a fair amount of couples. I saw one, it seemed like a family, which I thought was a little bit odd. And then, interestingly enough, there were two or three single men just sitting alone watching it, which I
Really?
found really interesting,
Wow. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. So in our theater, there were like 7 women that all came together and they brought roses for each other and like nerd gummy clusters. And they were all having like a fun time. You could tell they all had planned this for like weeks in advance. Maybe it was a book club or something. There were a couple couples and a couple just individual single women that I saw, but it was not packed. There were just maybe not even half full, I'd say.
Same. It was kind of a sprinkling of people. I will say that I've also seen TikTok or two now of young women. They kind of seem like college age women coming out of the theater in tears, destroyed, being like, I thought I was going to go see a love story. This was a horror. And so I think because I've read the book, I'm like, well, you don't even know the half of it. Like,
Right.
what if that baby actually lived and then, you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
And then,
But if I think about it, if I did go into this movie blind and that was the ending, I would be like, whoa, that would be a little bit of a whiplash, which
right.
I guess in a way is slightly true to the novel. I don't know.
Right.
But that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, it was interesting to see the emotion. Like I said, when I walked out, a few people were crying. A few of the women were sort of dabbing their eyes. And I understood that. And no, actually, I didn't understand that until you kind of explained it to me. That was sort of that movie magic moment, because you're right, the characters didn't earn that. I kind of thought it was playing on Emerald's understanding that book readers would have that emotion because they loved Heathcliff and Catherine's almost love that ended up fizzling out and being, the worst tragedy ever and trauma for everyone. I think that there was so much hope in that that that's what fizzles out and makes me cry, but you're right, it's probably just movie magic.
Unfortunately, I think so.
But I did want to speak to the artistic aspect of when Catherine's death and the scene that you were talking about where she's bleeding out. I think that that, again, speaks to the understanding that Emerald had of the book. This is exactly what happens to Catherine in an emotional sense. She is bled out. Everything is taken from her, and she does bleed out onto the next generation, onto everybody. It is never ending. It seeps into every corner. And I think that that really painted that picture. Again, I think Emerald really played with that grotesque take on life as it walks hand in hand and seeps into the corners of life and stays out of the light, but there's still this grotesque aspect to life.
But the question is it intentional? Or is she just using shock value to have people talk about her movies?
Yeah, I think maybe if this was her first film, I could say it was unintentional. But now with several films and seeing the press tour that we saw and the marketing that we saw, I think it's very intentional.
We didn't even talk about the press tour and the marketing
I
and
know.
the showmance of it all. I mean, yeah.
It was like
In
a
general, I think I'm kind of over it. I'm over the are they, aren't they, especially when the actors involved are married or in other relationships.
right.
I don't know if you need all of like the Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande crying together of it all to get someone to see your movie. It's a lot.
Right.
It's a bit exhausting.
Her wardrobe was impeccable. The stylists were unbelievable on the film. And I think that that's who should get all of the awards, is just the stylists and
Yes.
the effects and all the support staff, because that's what really brought it together and made it so believable, was that there wasn't a single hair out of place. And that is all the people that we didn't get to see.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. And really quickly, I just have to mention about Isabella's character one more time. I saw another creator compare her to Cecilia from Cruel Intentions,
Right? Yeah.
and that's so accurate.
Uncanny. Yeah, that's uncanny. That's a perfect portrayal of that character. And I bet you, just given Emerald's age, I wonder if that character seeped into Isabella a little bit.
Right.
What an iconic character. I love Selma Blair.
Yeah, same. Well, I think that about sums up our thoughts on this adaptation in air quotes.
Again, these were just our opinions, and all we can do is stand with our truth.
We'd love to hear your opinions, though. What did you think of the movie? Did you read or reread the book in preparation to see this adaptation? Let us know.
And thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. If you made it to this point in the video, leave us like a wind emoji or something that reminds you of the blustery moors of England.
And don't forget to subscribe for more bookish content, and leave us a like if something that we said resonated with you.
Until next time.
Happy reading!